Welcome to the Verdin Verdict Sports Show. Today we're going to break down the NFL Draft prospects for LSU. A lot of things have changed. We got a big bowl game in front of us, has a lot of potential to build some confidence for recruiting, some confidence for the transfer portal, and also some confidence for the players leaving and ending their journey at LSU and moving on to bigger and better things in the NFL. First things first, though, we want to shout out friend of the show, Jack Besh. He's announced he's committed to TCU, and that's a great landing spot for a great, talented individual like Jack. They're going to be able to utilize him a lot, get him in space like he needs to be, get him active, and utilize those Jack Best skill moves. But breaking down LSU's draft prospects. So we have a couple guys waiting to hear their name called on draft day. A couple of them have declared already, and we're speculating on the last few. But I've done some research. I've written some notes, and we're gonna see who's going to get their name called, who we're expecting to return to LSU, and in the end, who's going to wind up sitting out and playing. But without further ado, let's break down the draft prospects for LSU. Of course, we got declared B.J. Ojulari, Mekhi Garner, Jay Ward, and Jeray Jenkins. Those are four talented players who had pivotal roles throughout this year, and they provided great expertise. They provided great advice to the younger guys. They showed off that veteran mindset. Then they helped instill the new values and the culture that Brian Kelly wanted to put forward in Baton Rouge. But, B.J. Ojulari, I think he's a great first-round talent. He's got a lot of good pass rushing moves that can be utilized in today's game. It'll be a shame to see him go, as he was such a big role. He wore the number 18. He was voted by his own teammates, by his own peers, to be one of the more bigger leaders on this team, I guess you could say. He had a lot of good involvement with LSU the past couple years. You kind of expected to see him go, as we expect to see another couple of D linemen go as well, such as Jay Roy, Ali Gay. We'll get to that later. But that D line position has been one of the more spotlighted areas for LSU. They've impacted several games for several years now. Jamar Cain is the D-line coach heading forward. He's got a lot of good tools to use. He can even use guys in other position areas, such as Harold Perkins. He's got Savion Jones he's been breeding up. Of course, he's got Mason Smith returning. But when we're talking about losing a B.J. Ojulari, it'll show. It'll show a couple calluses that Jamar is going to have to develop, especially through this year, especially with the things that he was faced with, the different mobile quarterbacks he had to scheme against, and Matt House as well. Losing a guy like B.J. Ojulari will not necessarily be detrimental going forward, but it'll definitely be a big hole that LSU has to fill. But shout out to whoever is going to get B.J. in the draft. I hope he'd be a first round pick. It seems like the mock drafts have him going towards the late 20s. I think he can be anywhere upwards of top 15 even. He can impact the game with one play, and that's all you really need in today's game. You want that pass rush, that solid edge. You want to be able to lock down your spot. Speaking of locking down your spot, one of the highest rated corners in the SEC, Mekhi Garner, did his job through and through this year. He was able to get his matchup out the game, freeze him out. You never really saw him get burnt at all. You never saw him get beat deep that much. He's had his moment, sure, but that's the cornerback position. He has that tough, gritty personality, and he was able to handle some of the tougher wide receivers we've faced all year. We've faced plenty of pass offenses that have not necessarily wowed LSU and put the heat on them like Tennessee did, but Mississippi State, Florida, Bama, I'll give them credit in a sense where they were able to kind of test us, make us get the quarterback off the spot, stay true to their zone and not necessarily overcommit here, help here. Mekhi Garner was able to lead that DB room in an area where it needed to be led. Auburn game, we saw Seven Banks go down. We had several injuries, such as Major Burns. You even saw Jarek Bernard Converse go down. So Mekhi Garner being as healthy as he was, pretty big. Of course, B.J. Ojulari and Mekhi Garner will not play in the Citrus Bowl on January 2nd. They're going to try to protect themselves and protect that stock moving into the NFL draft. You can kind of guess this with Mekhi Garner based off of how he was playing at the SEC title game. He had a lot of limping moments, and he even had to go in the tent at one point. I'm sure that played a pretty big role in the decision to not commit to the Citrus Bowl. It's a good moment, but at the end of the day, when you're confident in your stock and when you're confident in what you've done and what you've been able to perform at, all year at that level, and wow as many scouts as you were able to. I think it's a pretty smart move from Mackay, and that's going to lead to a lot of question marks at the cornerback position for LSU. We're going to lose another guy in Jay Ward, who's been here for a long time, who's going to represent DBU as we expect he would. Going to fill in the shoes in the league like guys like Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Peterson, Del Pete. We got a lot of big, Jamal Adams. We had a lot of big DBs out of LSU that have made Baton Rouge proud and been able to go on and perform at the next level. I think that Jay Ward's going to be another one of those guys. He's a big player. He's got a lot of good skills. He's able to just completely throw his body at the offensive player and just knock him down. He's got no fear at all. He's putting it all on the line, laying the wood down. And Jay Ward's probably one of the more exciting DBs to watch in college football, and not just LSU. So seeing him go, of course, big loss for the DB room, but he'll be able to make the most of his time here and have it transition well at the next level. Dre Jenkins announced he's going to be at the NFL Draft. Of course, he has no more eligibility left, but Mr. Reliable, number 10, was, he shined bright in several big moments, whether it be a Kansas State touchdown or whether it be a Texas A&M final touchdown. You got Dre Jenkins getting hit in a phenomenal pass from Garrett Nussmeier in the SEC title game. There's going to be a lot of moments that are going to live on, even though number 10 will not be with us going forward. But the guys that, it's to be determined. The TBD category for the NFL Draft in 2023, you got guys who can enter, such as John Emery. John Emery Jr., yeah, he had his junior season cut out, but he's hit that eligibility threshold. He was a part of a pretty pivotal year for LSU football, so that might help his case. I think he's had a pretty good season, but he will have that extra year of eligibility due to the 2020 COVID extension that NCAA granted players. I think John Emery Jr., his best interest is to use that extra year, come back to LSU, develop some skills that he needs to work on, such as ball security. It's going to be a big one that John Emery Jr. is going to have to focus on. There was times this year where fans were calling, saying, well, we don't want to put the ball in John Emery's hands in the final seconds or in the big moments because they were worried that the ball would come out. And, I can understand where they're coming from in that instance, because there have been a lot of pivotal moments, or just a lot of moments in general, where John might have lost the ball here, lost the ball there. Might be a mindset thing. You saw it in camp when Mike Denbrock was having that one-on-one with him. So those are going to be the moments that you want to look to move past. And they're not big moments. They're not big things that are going to prevent John from seeing success at the next level. But it's just one of those surefire ways to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to succeed. You got that extra year, and you got a great opportunity to be able to become a champion and to progress and make your game exceed to the next level. Number 2, Greg Brooks. He's had great moments this year as well. Big Auburn interception, probably one of the more memorable plays of the defense this year. He's got one more year. I'd say use it. Be a big part of the DB room next year. He's got a lot of DBs coming out of LSU that he'd have to come back with. But in the NFL Draft as a whole, there's just a lot of talent. And guys like Greg Brooks, who have that extra ability to come back and be a bigger role, and to just keep showing the contributions and what have you. I think that they should capitalize on that. This is a pretty good situation. LSU's looking like they're trending up. LSU's looking like, not only do they need help in this category and they lean towards him a lot, but they want to make sure that they're putting guys out on the field that they trust. I think Greg Brooks, he'd be able to be used a lot. He's a bigger DB, but the coverage side of things and being able to get into his zone, those type of things should be worked on next year for him, or those type of things would probably be in his best interest to stay in the program, keep developing under great guys like Matt House, and in those areas when you got great defensive minded coaches around you, they're just going to help you day in and day out on the little nuances of the games, things that you might not have picked up in before. And I think this is one of the better areas for him to be in. Why not be at DBU? Why not be in the place that has helped numerous guys before you succeed? I mean, look at the 2 guys leaving here. Look at Jay Ward in particular. He's spent a lot of time here, put a lot of reps in, and it's going to pay off tenfold. There's a lot of things that a program like this can do for you, and one of them being give you the right fundamentals to be able to succeed at the next level. Third, Jaden Daniels. That's probably going to be one of the most pivotal decisions of the NFL draft for LSU all season. Jaden Daniels' return to LSU can mean many things. It can mean a transfer from Garrett Nussmeier, potentially Walker Howard. You got a lot of things that you're going to look at in the quarterback room. You're not really worried as a guy like Walker Howard transferring because he's so young. He has that red shirt behind him. This is going to be his freshman year, and he probably wasn't expecting him starting anyway. But a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, who has burned the red shirt, who has stayed for his red shirt freshman year, who now performed well in the SEC title game, has a chance to play in the bowl game, and if he performs well in that again, made a strong case to be the starter for next year. However, with a Jaden Daniels coming back, potentially, who could take over the game with his running ability, who could improve on the mental side of things and be able to read defenses and help that passing game grow for LSU, that could be a pretty big thing. Is Jaden going to pass up on this great year that he's had and all the development and quite frankly, at maybe one of the highest points for his draft stock? If Jaden came back next year and performed phenomenally and stayed true to all the things he was doing this year, and who knows, LSU makes a repeat trip to the SEC title game. Does Jaden's stock go higher, or is this really, is this going to be more the same in terms of what people are saying? They're going to still see the same things about his game, and who knows, he could even get hurt next year. There's a lot of things that you're going to consider if you're Jaden Daniels. I mean, you've had a great year, you've had a great run. It wouldn't surprise me if he ended the draft was a late fourth round, fifth round pick, got onto a team and progress through that, because next year is really just a progressive year. You want to see how you grow and develop up here, and I think that jump's going to have to be made in your rookie season in the NFL regardless. So you might as well just make the transition early. Next year looks like Garrett Nussmeier's year for LSU. You can see the writing on the wall already. Sure, Jaden's on the doorsteps of being clear for the bowl game, and that's going to be a pretty big decision on if he's going to stay or leave. But I think, if you give Jaden this game, he wraps things up, goes to the draft, and puts one more under his belt as an LSU Tiger in the Citrus Bowl, it would be a pretty storybook ending for his career. He comes in 1 year, breaks several records, takes the world or the country by storm, and he has a lot of doubters at first. Sure, still has some now, but there's a lot more people who have seen good things from him than bad, I'd say. Moving forward, Ali Gay, he's accepted the invite to the Senior Bowl. I think, he's done at LSU. I think that eligibility is ticking, going thin. He's had a great effort. He's had a great career. He's done great things. He's developed. He's one of those guys, one of those great stories that you read about, and it just warms your heart with what football can do for not only an international student, but for an international family, and help them connect to several different things that they would have never been able to before. I think him entering the NFL draft, he'd be another great defensive lineman from that great position group at LSU. It's another area that they're funneling into the NFL at a high successful rate. But with Ali going in, he's had several moments this year where he's playing against very talented people. Last season, he's playing against Mason Smith. This season, he's playing, or not against, but with. Last season, this season, he's playing with B.J. Ojulari, Harold Perkins. There were several guys that not necessarily took the spotlight, but implemented themselves into the scheme and just were forces of nature. I think that Ali Gay is going to have success in the NFL draft, but I think he's not going to get that B.J. Ojulari first-round projection because he didn't have as many memorable moments. He didn't have as many flashy plays. And sure, the quality of the players there, the fundamentals are there, and that's when it's going to lead him to the next level. But to put him in the same light as a B.J. Ojulari would be hard to do, for the simple fact that B.J. has been a phenomenal player, and he's made the captain's plays, as Brian Kelly's called them, all season long. B.J. Ojulari is the guy you want on first through fourth, where Ali Gay could be a third and fourth down big blitz defender. He could, get on the inside, get physical. The NFL can use you in several ways. They got several different lineups, several different schemes and ways to implement a player. So no doubt success will be had, but it won't be in that same category as a B.J. Ojulari, at least for the draft projections. Looking at Jaquelin Roy, another player from the defensive line group that I'd expect to leave. But it's one of those things. He's a junior. He's got time, and he's got big connections with guys who are returning. One of them being Mason Smith, who's going to be on a breakout season next year. Of course, he's got a lot to prove. It's the revenge tour. I say to 99, why not come back and perform with zero? Why not come back and wreck the field? But it is hard to let go on that dream. You've been chasing this your entire life. You're right here on the doorsteps of the NFL draft. You're able to be eligible. You don't want to sit here and just think, what could have been, yada, yada, yada. It's hard not to take that shot. So, Jaquelin Roy in the end winds up declaring for the NFL draft, foregoing his potential final season at LSU. It'd be understandable. And quite frankly, it could be a great decision for him. But I think it would be very, very interesting to see him and Mason come back, have a lunch sure, but he's also had interceptions. He's also had big time plays and game balls, and he's made quite the impact. So I think these guys leaving will be very, very tough to see. They've all done great things for us this season, but that's also going to help build their case for next year. That's also going to help them get paid in the big leagues, which is the goal at the end of the day for Brian Kelly and his coaching staff, to try to take these guys from where they are and put them into where they need to be. But the depth of the cornerback room, of course, it'll take a hit. But when recruiting the cornerback positions, especially, Brian Kelly wants to pull his base, he calls it. He wants to get the guys around Louisiana, the most talented area in the country, some would say, for high school football. He wants to stick to those guys, build off of the freshmen. He doesn't want to pull cornerbacks out of the transfer portal. He doesn't want to take guys in who are going to be here for a season, 2 seasons, and dip. He wants guys that are going to stay here and become the next LSU legends, the next LSU greats, who are going to have 3 to 4 seasons here as a Tiger. That's ideal. He wants them to be able to. He wants them to be able to instill those characteristics and those cultural aspects that a Louisiana athlete's been able to fulfill. If you look at most of our main guys, a Keyshawn Boutte, a Mason Smith, these type of guys have grown up watching LSU football, and they know what it takes to be LSU Tiger. They've seen guys perform. And what I mean by that is, it's a effort thing. It's a helping in the recruiting thing. You got Keyshawn Boutte saying he's taking Kyron Lacey out to lunch when they're looking to get him out the transfer portal. And he's able to recruit those guys and relate to them and get down to them on a personal level, which is big, especially when you want to look at veterans in the locker room and when guys are going to have to hold the player-only meetings to motivate and get the guys up and ready. So those type of moments and those type of things are going to be heavy, or going to be heavily looked at when they want to get guys out the portal, when they want to get guys to sign on the dotted line and join LSU. They're recruiting guys all over the country. Of course, they're still going to get the big name recruits. Brian Kelly said, you're going to see on signing day that they're from the Midwest, the Northwest, from Florida, Texas, California. He says that we're going to nationally recruit the best guys, but we're also going to pull our base. So main focus is going to be what's right here at home, the low-hanging fruit, the guys who are growing up LSU Tigers, who are already chomping at the bit to become one. But when you got the diamonds in the rough or just the big cats out, it's going to be hard not to get them. But speaking of Louisiana guys that you want to bring home, Aaron Anderson, 5-star from Endicott, went to Alabama, spent time this year, figuring out his role, and by the end of the season was unhappy with it. Enters the transfer portal and announces today that he's going to commit to LSU and come back to Baton Rouge. So that's a big get for LSU in that wide receiver room. It's just going to keep adding the depth for Cortez Hankton, for Mike Denbrock, for Brian Kelly. It's going to keep adding to what could be. Keyshawn Boutte is going to have more guys to take under his wing and potentially pass the torch to, and it only keeps getting better for this recruiting class and for this year. Coach Kelly said to expect, around the high 20s for people that offer scholarships to out of the portal and recruiting. It's going to be a pretty big turnover. We're losing a lot of guys, as we covered in the beginning of the show. So to fill in those roles, you want to go to the high schools. You want to go to the younger guys and get that base who's going to stay here and stay committed to the goal. Interesting thing now that the NCAA is passing is that bowl games will not be counted against the red shirt, which is pretty ironic because if you would think back to the Texas Bowl last year with Kansas State, that would have helped us exponentially. We would have been able to play Garrett Nussmeier. We would have been able to play a guy who was sitting out to protect himself and get the red shirt, which was a smart move on Nuss's part. But, that would have, who knows, that would have maybe helped LSU get over the edge, get the W. But this year, New year, different things. So with that being said, you got Walker Howard, who's sitting with a red shirt for us. Does that mean we get to see some Walker Howard reps maybe in the bowl game? People have been waiting to see. People have been, dying for any information they can get of the freshman quarterback for us. But Walker Howard, according to Brian Kelly, looked great in the red zone off of these practices. He's not saying he's sounding the alarm bells on Walker Howard being ready and potentially being in the conversation for the starting role, but he said it's nice to see him get active. It's nice to see him get on the gridiron and show what LSU recruited him to do. For the freshman guys who have been able to have good influence and impact on the team, you can look at Mason Taylor. Brian credited his ability to develop the tight end position. He says he wants to look at all aspects of the player, their athletic ability, seeing if they can play to their size. He wants someone who can be a well-rounded tight end, not just one-dimensional. He wants a complete tight end who can do all the jobs of football. He wants to block, receive the ball, of course, just help different movements of the passing game and even the running game. A tight end can be a very versatile position, and when you develop one who's a complete student of the game, who can be a sponge and soak up different ways to improve, like you can with a Mason Taylor. I mean, it's like you struck a gold mine. You're going to be able to benefit off of this kid's success and his mindset, not only in his area, in his role, but in others as well, because those type of players make everyone around them better. Um, Brian said everyone's evolved, excuse me, and they work really hard on and off the field to be a champion. He said you can choose to stay here, change the things that help you become a champion, but those guys that have eligibility left and want to be here know there's a standard and that they have to work to that standard every day. That's a big credit to Coach Kelly and, the type of message that he's sending to this team. He's saying, you guys want to stay here, you guys want to work towards a title game, you're going to not get a free pass. I get you were able to go to the draft, you were able to do this. There was quote unquote greener grass on the other side potentially, but that's that's over with. We're not gonna cry over spoiled milk here. You stayed, and you gotta perform as a college athlete. You gotta stick to the script. You gotta follow the little nuances he's installed, the segmented practices, the SWAT team lifts, and there's a lot of different things that Coach Kelly's implemented that not many other college football coaches have. But look at what he's been able to do, from going to the worst team in the SEC West to the best team, worst to first in 1 year. You got to change a lot. So credit to that. He's just pretty much reminding the guys, hey, look, it's business as usual when you return here to LSU. We're not here to just hand out offers. We're not here to just take in guys, and we're not just open for shop. We're here to win. It's a great message, and it makes especially as an LSU fan, makes you comfortable going forward with what guys are going to be able to do and what we're going to be able to do as a team. But they've watched Purdue's backup quarterback. Purdue's not going to have their starter. They're not going to have their head coach. They're not going to have some starting wide receiver. It's a big losses for them as well. I don't know if it's that's a confusing thing for me. You'd think that they'd want to play against LSU. This is probably going to be one of the most watched games that they participated in all year. It could help your stock rise to the next level. So I don't really know if it's an injury prohibiting some of these guys, but Purdue responded in an interesting way. They go ahead and hire Drew Brees as an assistant coach to try to get the recruiting efforts better and try to get different things organized inside that locker room. They're trying to figure out what it is that they're going to have to do to not necessarily roll over and get smashed by LSU, but the spread opened at 14 for the Tigers, big favorites. I think we're all expecting about the same here. That I think LSU is going to go out and perform. LSU is going to go and more than likely take over. I don't think we're going to sit here and see a 35-point win, but we'll probably see multiple quarterbacks get active due to the lead. I think you're going to see different guys. I think hopefully it's not going to be a Jaden Daniels getting off the field with an injury thing like last game that's going to make us see multiple teams, but it could be something to look for. But moving on to the final part of the show, the weekly segment, Random Ranking Review. We're going to break down the NFL rankings now throughout the college football season. We break down the college football, the AP poll. We break down the CFP poll. But now since that's all set in stone, that's all old news, we're going to move towards the NFL playoffs and, the league seedings. We're going to go with 1 through 10. We're going to let Siri pick a random number, and we're going to see if the team in that spot that we've randomly decided deserves to be there. This segment's brought to you by Bayou City Investment Advisors. Thank you to our sponsors. And without further ado, let's get out there and see who Siri has for this week. Hey, Siri, pick a number 1 through 10.
It's 2.
Siri picks number 2, and that's going to be the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills had a great game this week. Everyone was talking about it, and everyone wanted to know how are they going to perform against the Dolphins. A lot of snow, big test. You got all eyes in Buffalo this week. Of course, close back and forth down to the wire game. 32-29 is what it's going to end up being. When you see games like this go down to the wire, and especially with the snow, you got the old lineman shoveling it off. You can't use a towel. You got to use your hands. It's classic NFL moment right there. You got the guy sliding in. You got Bass sliding in center field. Stephon Diggs sliding behind him. Those type of things, are going to live on forever. But what's going to live on a little bit more than that might be Josh Allen's historic performance this year. I think Josh Allen has implemented himself into the MVP conversation again. Last year, he had a pretty good chance. This year, he's got almost an even better. Not only is his team one of the greatest Super Bowl contending teams right now, but he threw for 304 touchdowns on no picks. He had a great passer rating of 119. But, surprisingly, Tua, who's getting a lot of disrespect this season, has been able to perform and keep up with the pace. 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had Tyreek Hill with 9 catches, surefire target. Of course, Tyreek Hill with the sticky gloves, always getting active. I'd say, of course, Buffalo Bills deserve to be where they are at number 2. Eagles are a solid number 1. I don't think anyone's going to knock them off their spot. Bills, yeah, I agree, number 2 team. But I think at number 3, I'd put the Minnesota Vikings. I wouldn't put the Kansas City Chiefs. You can sit here and criticize the Vikings for going down as much as they did to the Colts, but look at the Chiefs today against the Texans. They go to overtime and they win by 6 points. A team who's only won 1 game all year. So I wouldn't criticize the Vikings a little bit too much. I think the top 3 teams in the NFL are as follows: Eagles, Bills, Vikings. But for this week's random ranking review, yes, I think the number 2 team in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills, should stay the number 2 team. They've had a great performance, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to see them enter number 1. Josh Allen is doing great. They're able to use Devin Singletary out of the backfield pretty well. Of course, Stephon Diggs doing great. Isaiah McKenzie performing fantastic. Big game from Dawson Knox. Shout out my fantasy tight end. But, that defense took a big hit with Von Miller going out, but they still got great guys. They still got a well-rounded group. And, when someone goes down like that, it could quite frankly give a team a boost. And I think that's what we're going to see here in Buffalo. Not many games harder for the Bills. Of course, that more than likely inevitable Chiefs matchup coming forward in the postseason will probably cap it off. But this Dolphins game, they showed the grit. They showed the long-lasting endurance, the great coaching. I think all signs point to Buffalo leading the AFC into the Super Bowl race, but number 1 team in football, Philadelphia Eagles, representing the NFC, is pretty probable too. That'd be a great Super Bowl. It'd be a good number 1 and number 2 matchup, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. You can continue to get NFL coverage and, of course, your exclusive LSU coverage here in the Verdin Verdict. If you subscribe, hit the notification bell to never miss another stream. We're going to be taking a week off for Christmas. Of course, Sunday, our stream day, is going to fall on Christmas, so we're gonna pause for this week, but we're going to be working on some great projects for you, so stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for our return stream when we're going to be entering the new year and hopefully welcoming in the final LSUW to push us into the double-digit win season. This has been the Verdin Verdict. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit the description. Follow us on social media wherever you get your daily sports news, and hit that notification bell. Thank y'all for tuning in. Have a good one.